There is a specific silence that occurs in a room when a certain type of person decides, without a single word, that you no longer have access to them. Not to their time, not to their energy, and certainly not to the version of them that made you feel more alive than anyone else ever had. This decision doesn't arrive with a fight. It doesn't come with a dramatic exit or a tearful confrontation. It arrives quietly, in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, perhaps while they are washing dishes or staring out a window, and something inside them simply stops reaching for you. You won't see it happen. That is what makes it so disorienting. One day they are present, warm, attentive, the kind of person who remembers what you said 3 weeks ago and asks about it. And then, slowly, they are not. They still reply to your messages, they still show up, but something essential is gone. You can feel the absence of it, even if you can't name it. By the time most people notice, the decision was made months ago. In my years of studying the human psyche, I have found that no one tells you the truth about empaths. The first myth we must destroy is that they are fragile. The word empath has been so diluted by pop psychology that most people picture someone who cries at commercials and needs a weekend to recover from a difficult conversation. That is not what an empath is. An empath is someone whose nervous system is wired for extraordinary attunement. They don't just hear what you say, they register what you didn't say. They feel the shift in your energy before you've consciously identified it yourself. They notice when your laugh sounds slightly different, when your silence has a different texture, or when your "I'm fine" means the exact opposite of those words. This is not a personality quirk. Neuroscience has demonstrated that highly empathic individuals show measurably higher activation in the mirror neuron system, the neural architecture responsible for feeling what others feel as if it were happening to your own body. This means their emotional world is not just more expansive than average. It is more expensive. Every interaction costs something. This is exactly why, when an empath finally chooses to disappear from your life, you should understand the full weight of what that means. They didn't do it lightly. They did it after carrying far more than you ever saw them carry. People often assume empaths disappear because they're too sensitive to handle conflict. The truth is actually the opposite. Empaths are extraordinary at handling conflict. What they cannot handle, what their nervous system eventually refuses to tolerate, is invisible conflict. This is the kind that never gets named. The kind that exists in the gap between what is said and what is meant. The kind where you do something that wounds them, and instead of a fight, they absorb it. They process it alone at 2 a.m, turning it over in their mind, trying to find the most generous interpretation of your behavior. They will excuse you more times than you deserve to be excused. They will translate your worst moments into the language of your trauma, your stress, or your bad day. They are by nature the most loyal people in any room, until they aren't. The behaviors that make an empath disappear are rarely the dramatic ones. It is almost never the big betrayal or the explosive argument. It is the accumulation of small moments that each carry the same message: your inner world is not welcome here. It often starts with the jokes. You say something sharp about their sensitivity, or how they always take things too seriously, and you frame it as humor. When their expression shifts, you double down. I'm just kidding. You know I'm joking, right? They smile, because they've already learned that naming the discomfort will be treated as further evidence of the very sensitivity you were mocking. So they file it. They don't forget it. They file it. Then comes the dismissal, the quiet kind. They tell you something real, something that cost them courage to say out loud. I've been feeling disconnected from us lately, or when you said that yesterday, it stayed with me. Your response, perhaps out of your own discomfort, is to minimize. You're overthinking it. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Why do you always make everything such a big deal? In that moment, you didn't just correct them, you erased them. You told them that their perception of their own emotional experience is wrong. For someone whose entire way of moving through the world is built on the accuracy of their perception, that erasure lands somewhere much deeper than an argument. It lands in the very foundation of their being. Eventually, a reversal happens. They finally name something important, and within minutes, through a sequence of moves so practiced it happens almost automatically, they find themselves comforting you. They end up managing your reaction to their pain. They apologize for the way they brought it up. The original issue evaporates, and they're left holding both the original wound and a new layer of guilt. They realize their silence had been their armor. They forgot to wear it. Beneath the surface, the empath's nervous system is running a continuous, unconscious analysis of these data points. It is learning whether a place is safe, and whether the cost of being real is a price they can afford. At a certain point, the data resolves into a conclusion. This place is not safe for me. That is the beginning of the disappearance. The most disorienting part is that the behaviors driving them away often look completely normal to the outside world. If the empath tried to explain them to someone else, they might be met with a blank stare or a suggestion that they are being too sensitive. This inability to make the harm legible is agonizing. When you can't point to anything obviously wrong, you start to wonder if something is wrong with you instead. This erosion of trust in one's own perception is not just a side effect of the dynamic. For many, it is the entire mechanism. We must name the behaviors clearly. The first is emotional outsourcing. Whenever the emotional temperature of an interaction rises, you instinctively hand the weight of it to the empath. You become quieter or moodier, and the empath, because of how they are wired, cannot not respond to that shift. They feel your discomfort in their own body, so they soften. They ask what's wrong. They manage the emotional climate so you don't have to. But their own emotional needs are consistently being displaced. They begin to feel that their inner world is a burden they are only permitted to carry alone. The second is conditional presence. Your warmth and affection are only available when they are being easy, happy, or low maintenance. The moment they bring something heavy, a need, a boundary, a truth, the warmth recedes. It simply cools. The empath notices every time. They learn that your care is not unconditional. It is a reward for being easy. That realization brings a grief that is much harder to recover from than anger. The third is the habit of rewriting history. It looks quieter than blatant gaslighting. It looks like, I never said that, or you always misremember things when you're upset. It is an attack on the very instrument they use to navigate life, their memory and perception. After enough of these moments, they have two choices: collapse inward or cut the source. They almost always choose the latter. Many people who enact these patterns are not malicious. They are often carrying their own unprocessed wounds. They learned early on that vulnerability was dangerous, that history deserves compassion, but compassion does not mean an empath is obligated to absorb the consequences of your pain indefinitely. Understanding why someone is the way they are is not the same as consenting to the behavior. The day an empath recognizes that distinction is the day the decision is made. During this period, the empath looks like they are managing. They are still showing up, but inside, they have begun an interior withdrawal. They stop bringing you their full self. They stop sharing the creative idea, the private fear, or the specific joy. These things get rerouted into a part of themselves that is no longer accessible to you. The relationship continues in a partial state, where proximity is maintained, but intimacy is already dead. This is why people are so stunned when the empath finally leaves. But everything seemed fine. We were just together last week. No, there were dozens of signs, but they were interior signs. By the time an empath stops confiding in you, The exit has already been planned. What follows is not a decision. It is an execution of a plan already made. In this final stage, they are grieving a relationship while still being physically present in it. Psychologists call this ambiguous loss, the particular anguish of mourning someone who is still standing right in front of you. They are waiting for evidence that they are wrong, hoping the version of you they first knew will reappear. This hope is not weakness, it is the persistence of their belief in human change. But it also extends their suffering. They are in love with your potential rather than your current pattern. The disappearance is not always inevitable, but the window for change is small. It requires repair, not just an apology. An apology is a statement directed at the past. Repair is behavioral and sustained. It means noticing when you are outsourcing and choosing to hold your own discomfort. It means responding to their hurt with curiosity rather than defense. When real change begins, the empath does not immediately soften. They become more watchful. This is intelligence. Their nervous system needs more evidence to update its conclusion. Trust is not a light switch. It is a slow accumulation of contradictory evidence. If the repair doesn't come, or if it dissolves back into the old pattern, the empath simply stops monitoring for change. They stop watching. They are no longer hoping. They are planning. They reach a peace that looks like indifference, but is actually the acceptance of a truth they spent a long time trying to disprove. What they find on the other side of the disappearance is not cinematic freedom, but a strange emptiness. They have to leave behind the version of themselves that spent years contorting and shrinking. They have to relearn how to exist in their own presence without someone else's emotional climate to monitor. This reclamation happens in layers. The empath who withdrew finds their way back to themselves. They begin to speak from their actual experience rather than an edited version. They find connections where the full weight of who they are is welcomed. And when they experience that, the contrast with what they used to accept becomes clarifying. If you are watching an empath disappear from your life, remember, intention does not determine impact. You can wound someone without meaning to. If the window is still open, what is required is not a grand gesture, but consistency in the next ordinary moment. Empaths do not disappear because they stop loving. They disappear because they finally love themselves enough to stop accepting less than full presence. The disappearance is an act of self-authorship. It is the moment they write themselves back into the story as the main character. If you feel yourself withdrawing, know that you are not giving up. You are finally honoring your instincts. Disappearing from the wrong places is only half the work. The other half is showing up fully in the right ones. That is where your story actually begins.